This episode of Nerdist News is sponsored by Tor Books. Looks like Shrek is getting a reboot and the internet is not happy. If somebody once told us that the world was going to roll film on a Shrek reboot, we'd say that they weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. But fans of CG ogres got slapped with an L on their forehead this morning when it was announced that Universal Pictures is interested in reviving the Shrek franchise. In an interview with Variety this week, Despicable Me producer and Illumination Entertainment owner Chris Meledandri talked at length about Illumination's upcoming film, The Grinch, as well as his storytelling philosophy. However, The Grinch wasn't the only big green baddie that Meledandri talked about, as he also gave a few details on his plans to revive Shrek. If you're wondering how the producer behind Minions could make a new Shrek film when the character is owned by Dreamworks, you should know that in 2016, Dreamworks was purchased by NBC Universal, which also owns Illumination Entertainment. And besides running Illumination, Meledandri also works as a consultant at Dreamworks, so if anyone was in a position to make a new Shrek film, this is the guy. So what would a rebooted Shrek film even look like? Well, thankfully, Meledandri has no plans on recasting Mike Myers, Eddie Murphy, or Antonio Banderas. Meledandri said to Variety, "When you look back on those vocal performances, they're awesome. And while you certainly could make a case for a complete reinvention, I find myself responding to my own nostalgic feelings of wanting to go back to those characterizations." Meledandri continued, "The challenge for us has been to find something that really does feel like it's not simply yet another film in a series of sequels." Now, whether these films will be a total reboot or just a revival of the franchise, or if we'll be seeing 90s band turned meme Smash Mouth grace the soundtrack remains to be seen. But at the very least, Meledandri is doing everything that he can to bring more Shrek back to theaters. Of course, if you've been paying attention to the internet, it's not entirely surprising that the suits that own the rights to Shrek are ready to bring back the lovable green ogre. In roughly the last 10 years, Shrek started experiencing a completely weird revival through fanfic, fan art, and an ill-fated Shrek-chan board. Eventually, the underground Shrek obsessions from the corners of the internet boiled over into the mainstream in the form of some dank Shrek memes. And speaking of memes, today's Shrek Reboot news definitely sparked a lot of hot takes on Twitter, and the consensus was largely negative, which means it's time for an internet reaction roundup. At Country Hodgepodge said, "Shrek is being rebooted. That's like rebooting Citizen Kane. You can't reboot a masterpiece." To which I say, I concur. At Elimus Magus was equally disappointed, saying, "They're rebooting Shrek. If there was any time for a revolution, now would be it." True, so don't forget to vote. Now, some folks were less up in arms and simply expressed their sheer disappointment at the thought of a new Shrek reboot. At Gear Third Manga said, "Illumination is rebooting Shrek. Can I get a no?" And at Ashley Bohart had this hot take, "I'd rather watch Shrek the Third for 24 hours than have a rebooted Shrek." Whoo! Now, some folks look to the bright side, even though the bright side in at Hidden Xperia's tweet is more like a dystopian future with way too much content. Oh boy, I can't wait for the Shrek cinematic universe with 15 donkey spin-offs. We know you're being sarcastic, but somebody is going to take that tweet seriously, so let's just shut that idea down for now, please. Then there's at AKA Lunatrix, who should win some sort of optimism award for finding maybe the only thing that we can all agree is the upshot of this entire thing. Shrek is back, boys! New meme content incoming! It's people like you that keep the prequels alive. And at the end of the day, whatever happens with the new Shrek coming from Illumination, we're sure the internet will find ways to keep Shrek alive for centuries to come. In other words, Shrek will definitely outlive us all. But what do you folks think? Did you like our Shrek explanation? Are you excited to get a new Shrek movie?
Yes. No.
If it were on a ballot, would you vote for a Shrek reboot, revival, or just leave Shrek alone? Let's discuss. And thanks again to today's sponsor, Tor Books, America's largest publisher of science fiction and fantasy. Read Oathbringer by #1 New York Times bestselling author Brandon Sanderson, out now in paperback. In Book 3 of the Stormlight Archives, humanity faces a new desolation with the return of the Voidbringers, a foe with numbers as great as their thirst for vengeance. Check it out wherever books are sold, and for more of the latest science fiction and fantasy releases, follow at Tor Books, that's at TOR Books.